We are here with Mr. Brian Hopper, grandson of the founder of Lawndale, Charles B. Hopper. And we'll talk about any reminiscences and memories he has about his grandfather and his family and so on. So how you doing, Brian?
We're fine.
We're fine. When I first talked to you, you said that your memories of your grandfather were sketchy a little bit because it would have been family parties, like holidays and that sort of thing. What would have been your earliest? Would you have been a real little kid, or was it a little bit later that you first remember?
Yeah, real little. I'd say mid and early 50s. And, before 5, I remember him quite well. He was always a bit distant, but always present too. He's a bit in the background, sort of fellow.
Mm-hmm.
But everything was always in place. I remember the family get-togethers. They were always quite pleasant and large, festive, and so on.
So the times that you would have saw Charles Hopper, it would have been a whole bunch of other family members were there.
Almost always. There were a couple of excursions separately on my own with my grandmother. I guess he was off in his office working those times.
Mm-hmm. So you may not have had, like, say, a kid that would have had an experience with his grandfather going fishing or going to the zoo. You really didn't have that kind of experience with him?
No, he was a fellow involved, very involved with his work, and just always at that. However, there were summers at a beach house for a few years. This summer I'd get to spend a week or so in Oceanside or Carpinteria variously.
Oh.
And he was around and we would talk a bit. I remember he cared a lot if I became a lawyer or not, I think.
Really? He would kind of push you
Yeah, he liked
for
that
that as a
idea.
career?
And, but it wasn't meant to be, and that's okay, I guess.
Yeah.
But, he was surprisingly affectionate at times, but it went so far, He was head of a large family.
Right. Maybe just he had that businessman's mentality of
Sure.
focusing.
Sure.
Do you ever recall, I think you said you didn't remember him saying anything ever about the city of Lawndale that you could recall. Do you remember him mentioning any of the other towns, Lakewood or Southgate or Bel Air or any of those places that he worked on?
I don't know that he mentioned them. I think other family members mentioned them. And, they would talk about him and how he was doing or not, particularly in the 1960s and so on.
So maybe it was your dad and some of his siblings that were aware of him being a founding pioneer of some of the Southern California cities?
Oh, certainly. They were always well aware of it. And, yeah, it was kind of a topic ongoingly.
Just something that didn't cross your mind very much?
I was pretty young.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But it's significant to think that someone could say that their grandfather was responsible for founding 4 separate Southern California cities.
Yeah, and some organizations too.
That's right. The Auto Club.
I suppose more, but just a lot per person. Yeah, he did that, and he may have had a role in Inglewood Park, meeting the racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
never quite certain of that, but he may have. At the very least, he knew people involved with that. I think back in '38, perhaps, or thereabouts.
I know in the book that the one that you gave the cemetery, various people that he knew included like Baron Hilton. You know, Paris Hilton's grandfather was a golfing buddy of his, and even the actor Walter Brennan worked for him at the real estate office at one time.
That's right.
Do you ever remember him mentioning any of the other either celebrities or early pioneers that he knew?
He mentions, I think, a few in the memoirs.
But he didn't really have a chance to talk to you as a kid about it?
Yeah, we didn't relate that way. There was some talk of golf and tennis, and
Yeah.
passions of his.
Yeah.
And he had a wonderful little putting green on the house in Bradbury.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we used to putt out there pre-dinner in the old days.
So that would just be sort of like having your own little private park or...
Pretty wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be neat. Is there a pool there at the home as well?
No, you'd think there would be, but no, there wasn't.
But he had the tennis court.
He did have tennis courts, I think. I don't know that I ever got to play on them, but yeah, 2 or 3 perhaps. Not sure.
Did you think of your grandfather as a wealthy person when you were a kid?
One was conscious of it a bit, but not overly, you know. Just things were always nice.
Didn't think he was my rich grandfather, but he was just comfortable?
No, just, yeah, comfortable. Things always in place and taken care of and served. Arrangements made and on, you know.
Do you remember any times he ever said anything or memories about his parents or other going back in time? About coming to California and so forth?
Not really. He may have spoken of New Mexico on the way out.
That's right, he lived there for a time.
Yeah. Albuquerque or thereabouts, perhaps.
Yeah, in his book he talked about what a rough town it was. It was like the Wild West.
That's right. And got through all that and coming from Harrisburg, I believe. And, I may have gotten some, I may have received along the way some Apache, what do we say, artifacts?
Artifacts, yeah, like arrowhead or
like
something.
Like an arrowhead or two, or that kind of thing. I think he did speak of the Santa Fe and
yeah, there was something in the book where he talked about meeting the train and getting people to come to a hotel somewhere.
That there was a chain of those I learned back in those years.
Oh, the one that he worked at?
Well, it was a chain known for having facilities around train stations, like I guess around the country or the West.
I wonder if that was like the,
and
was it the Gilmore Girls? Not the Gilmore Girls, there was a movie with Judy Garland about they had a chain of hotels or restaurants by the trains. I
the
remember.
name Howard Johnson springs to mind, but I'm not sure if that's right. Maybe it became that eventually or something, but they were there for the express purpose of putting travelers up for the night, I believe. So
when your family would do these events or get-togethers at the holidays, it would always be up at their place, or would they ever come to your dad's place? Or?
No, it was always at their home. Very nice, you know, but Gosh, there'd be 40 or 50 of us, I think. Remember, Mapu would try to get us to quiet down. We rather were insistent on hide and seek and other mischiefs. But
All the cousins and
yeah, it was like crowd control.
yeah. Now your dad went into the real estate business with him for a time.
Yes.
Back in the 1940s, we talked about.
Yes, he did.
But it didn't last that long. They had that disagreement, and so they ended the partnership somehow.
I believe they had a falling out in about 1949, and it would have been after starting it up in 46 or 45, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
After my dad was discharged from the Navy. Yeah, I guess it went okay for quite a while though.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was business with Arco leases frequently, and it's the old Atlantic Richfield.
Yeah. Do you think that, because your grandfather didn't pass away until I think it was 64, so between the falling out and that time, be it as he was junior and named after his dad, did they sort of rekindle their relationship or patch things up?
I think they remained a little on the distant side always.
Ever since that time? Mm.
Yeah, there was certainly mutual tolerance, but things, I had the feeling always things were never the same.
Oh.
So it goes in families sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. And what about your dad's generation? The other brothers and sisters, they were all still close, and at least.
They were all around physically and present and close in the era.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning 55 through early mid-60s.
And you knew all of, or not maybe all, but the ones that you knew of your dad's generation was his sister Virginia, or Ginger, who's still alive, living in Riverside.
Mm-hmm.
You said she's 97?
Yeah, believed to be up over 90 now.
Wow. And
Doing
then,
fairly well and so on.
and then her brother Hal, who just passed away last year. He was the doctor that we're just reading about.
Yes, yes. Most saddened at his loss. I liked Hal a lot. He was a cool uncle.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as we were looking in the obituary, his stepbrother, Emery, who was raised by your grandfather
Yes.
when he married his second wife.
Yes. Yes, it was rather like that famous couple that they made a movie of, joining up. Forget the title, but so be it. Combined, there were 7 siblings, I believe.
Mm. What did your dad do as a business after the real estate? Or did he stay in a different part of real estate?
He continued on in real estate. He did. It was okay. It worked, and with difficult years, but the others were relatively good.
Mm-hmm.
And so on. Did a lot of lease work, I believe. Not so much in sales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was moderately successful. So on.
And let me ask, I'm curious, would you say that, like, you and your cousins and other members of the family, I would imagine, despite however any of the past interactions may have gone in the family, would it be fair to say that you'd be proud of the fact that your grandfather is really an unsung but important part of California's history, at least Southern California's history?
Oh, indeed. I have always felt proud of him as an accomplished man. There was always that. It was rather transmitted in conversations and the culture, if you will, of the family and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Respect, a lot of respect for the man.
Mm-hmm.
And that went along with a bit of distance in his later years, but it was all okay. People were pretty happy, really.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought to, at some time, visit, or maybe you already have, with friends or even other family members, some of these towns like Lawndale or Southgate or Lakewood or Bel Air, and just say, you know, my family created these communities, because it may be unknown to those communities, but you could just say that even to yourself.
I haven't gone back there with the perspective, but I've been there most places generally over, I'll say during USC years and such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know the cities a little,
Mm-hmm.
but it would be good to take a look and see what's what at some point, sure.
Well, if you ever care to visit Lawndale and you want to tour around or meet the mayor or see City Hall, I'm sure they'd be very welcoming to see you.
Well, that sounds rather fun, and you know, perhaps we can incorporate that.
Yeah, because you're a living link to the creation of those communities.
Indeed. Indeed.
Well, anything else you'd like to add in closing, or say, or even recall? Anything else come to mind?
Well, he had a couple of kind of near miracles in his life. I'd say maybe more than two, but you know, he had a first heart attack in 1955 when he was building the new house in Bradbury, the new ranch house it was known as, and he survived that. In that era, you know, not many people survived really, and he did.
Yeah.
And he was fairly well off physically for that in his later years. And it was considered, you know, very well done, survival-wise and so on. And a good thing, but, you know, he had to be considered physically the last 10 years or so. And along with that, and perhaps it was related, I never knew, but the first house, the first structure for the second house, when it was being built, burned down also in 1955, I believe, and he had to have the men start over on rebuilding. So he kept coming back and surviving, and on and on.
I think you said that he, in his business ventures, he had these failures that he did overcome.
Indeed. The Lord had it that he lost everything twice and remade it 3 times or so. That's just the culture.
Yeah. Didn't quit.
No, he kept at things.
If you had one thing to say, if you were talking to some of the, say, school kids going to Lawndale, is there anything about your family's connection to them, or anything that you would say, or advice, or just anything at all that might come to mind?
I suppose I shouldn't give advice, but you know, I've had my things, but you know, just work at stuff. Be good.
Yeah. Well, very good. Thanks for sharing your memories of Charles Hopper, founder of Lawndale.